appreciate you joining us today.
Oh, I appreciate you having me. Thanks, Zach.
Awesome, man. So for those of you who don't know who Lee Sommers is, Lee's a personal trainer. He's repping the Healthy Baller brand right now up in Rockville where he trains his clients at. For those of you who need to find Lee, by the way, you can find him on his website. It's ppf-fitness.com. And also, he's pretty active. Say, Lee, you're pretty active on Instagram. That's leesommerspt.com. That's LeeSommerspt. So, Lee, let's get rolling. So, first off, tell us a little bit your story, because you have a unique background beyond just, hey, I train clients. How'd you get into training and doing what you do now?
When I was in college, I was a business major. I was a double major, finance and economics. And I decided real early on, and I kind of discovered that wasn't going to be my path, that helping people was what I really wanted to do. And this was kind of the course that I took. Started training back in college in my undergrad work. And then pretty much right upon graduation, I wound up getting a job as a director of training for a commercial health club chain in the area. Actually, it was a national chain. And so at 22, 23, I was a director managing about 20-some trainers. Did that job for, with two different companies for pretty much 17, 18 years. Before I decided that I kind of wanted out of that setting. I saw a lot of holes in their models and the way that they did things. It didn't really match the direction that I wanted to, spend the rest of my life. So I jumped out and started my own thing. And that Purpose Personal Fitness was born. And as you mentioned, I do a lot of my work out of Healthy Baller with some guys that I really, really like, I really respect. And they've created a really nice dynamic, a really nice atmosphere to train out of, both for me and for my clients.
Awesome, man. I appreciate you sharing that. And I know a unique niche that you have is you work with a lot of swimmers. So how'd that all start? How'd you develop such a great reputation in just the swimming community here in the DMV area?
I kind of fell into it. Back in, I want to say it was 2013, there was a young lady training at our facility. She was training as part of her team. Her name was Katie Ledecky. You probably heard of her. And she was training with Nation's Capital Swim Club, and they were training at our facility, one of the commercial health club chains I was working at. The team was training, but between the coach and the parents, they had decided that they wanted her to kind of peel out from the group and get individualized attention, which was a pretty good decision. At the time, there was a gentleman by the name of Matt Boyd who was training Nation's Capital Swim Club for me at the commercial health club chain. Almost exactly when she was deciding that she was going to be doing individualized training, Matt was going to be leaving me to go open up his own thing, his own training facility, which Healthy Baller. A whole nother reason why I really appreciate Matt Boyd. So he started his own thing. And in that, I wound up taking over the training of Katie starting in 2013, all the way through 2016 through the Rio Olympics. That alone really created my niche. When you train the best swimmer in the world, people kind of flock to you. But at that time, I had minimal to no experience training swimmers. I've never had a swim lesson in my life. I didn't even learn to swim until I moved to Maryland from New York, and learned when I was 11, never had a lesson. So I had to quickly throw myself into the fire. I read everything I could read. I watched everything I could watch. I picked the brain of every swimmer and every coach I could. And that really kind of created this niche where I'd say about 75% of the people that I train are either middle school, high school, college, professional, or master swimmers. So it's been great. It's allowed me to kind of reinvigorate myself in the industry where I wasn't just always training adult personal training populations. I get to work with a lot of different athletes while swimmers kind of have their own little little niche in and of themselves. They're all very different athletes with different issues, different goals, different physical capabilities. So it really allowed me to kind of grow this business, which I'm forever grateful.
That's awesome, man. That's so cool. And I can see how, you get somebody like Katie and she's winning all those gold medals. I mean, that's definitely a good way to grow that. And let me ask you this though. So swimmers, it's a unique sport in so many ways. What's unique or different about working with a swimmer as opposed to maybe another athlete that say plays a field sport, for example?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's the very obvious physical differences as far as having to react to ground forces and grab, and I've found that teaching swimmers to be kind of well-rounded athletes as opposed to just focusing on their swimming is really helpful towards them kind of grasping the things we need them to grasp in the strength and conditioning field. So throwing things at them to just make them better athletes, especially early on, I found a lot of success with the kids that I can get at 11, 12, 13, where they're starting to really just filter themselves as swimmers. If I can get to expose a little bit more athletic attributes to them, it really benefits them long-term, both in injury prevention and just picking up the stuff we need them to pick up strength and conditioning wise. They're also better on their walls. They're better on their starts. So it really carries over. But I have found that, a lot of the kids, the ones who have not had any exposure to any other sports, no soccer, no gymnastics, no basketball, whatever it may be, and haven't gotten exposure to some type of dry land strength and conditioning stuff early on, they struggle in developing that athleticism, and it becomes a little bit more of a challenge to keep them healthy because they've never gotten to feel what it feels like to be stable outside of the water. And so I'm sure you get to see quite a few overuse injuries, whether it's more times than not it's shoulders, but you can certainly see some breaststroke or knees, some stuff like that, where the kids who have gotten exposed to a lot more athletic things, they certainly have I would say for the most part, have more success as they go through their swim career.
Gotcha. That makes a ton of sense. And I think you highlight on some great points there. I know, and it does highlight what you said. It almost sounds like, and I know this is a lot of what we see too, swimmers are so unique because, their athletic activity for the most part is spent in a buoyant state in the water where they're getting a lot of external support from the buoyancy of water, and they're not actually having to be against gravity. And that can present a whole host of sort of issues if you're not maintaining the qualities that are necessary maybe to be just a out of water animal, if you will.
Yeah.
Gotcha. No, that's huge. That's really cool. So what kinds of things, I mean, I know it's a very vague question and very hard to answer because every athlete is specific and it is an individual and all those things. But is there anything in particular, say you have a group of swimmers that you typically, say you have a new group of swimmers that comes in to see, is there anything in particular that you want to make sure you're addressing, early on with those types of folks?
Yeah, so it depends on, what age group we're talking about. At early onset, I'm getting some kids that are anywhere from 9 to 12 in large groups. So it's teaching them how to be athletes. It's something as simple as teaching them a skip series, teaching them how to jump, landing mechanics, body position stuff, very low level body position stuff, but also trying to make it fun so they're not bored because, at that age, they'll wander if they're not getting enjoyment out of it. And then in the older group, we're still always paying attention to body position. We're just making it significantly more challenging. Obviously getting upper body drivers, lower body drivers, trying to find ways to make something like a plank a little bit more enjoyable and more challenging so that we're getting adaptations that will kind of play into the water. Body position is always kind of key regardless of the exercise, whether it's, a plank, it's a deadlift, it's a squat, and we have them pretty much do it all. We don't do a ton of Olympic lifting at the high school level, which is the majority of who I'm seeing. But we do kind of building block exercises to get them to that, because they probably will be doing that in their college programming. Doing a ton of shoulder stability stuff. I'd say about 1 out of 10 actually has shoulder mobility issues. More times than not, I'm sure if you're seeing swimmers, you're seeing tons of hypermobility issues and then overuse injuries that, occur because the stability is not there. But I'm seeing a couple of athletes where I feel like the shoulder mobility isn't there, or the thoracic mobility isn't there. And that's the stuff that becomes a limiting factor, which is the fun part of the job, is, picking out that 1 or 2 kids who need something completely different from the group. It's also the challenge when you're training them in, 20, 25 kid groups.
No, that really gives you some clarity as to sort of how your brain might work when you're getting these kids in. And of course, you mentioned the challenge, and when you have like a ton of people, you of course have to take that into consideration. So that's huge. Now, if I'm an athlete, and maybe I'm a swimmer, I'm not a swimmer, because I know you work with athletes who aren't swimmers as well. And I'm thinking maybe working with you or a trainer in general. How do I know if it's something I should do? If you can help me, could you give me some more insight on that?
Yeah, I think that plays not just even with athletes. I feel like that plays with any client, any patient. I feel like if I'm the one spending the money and dedicating my time to working with someone, I kind of want to go through an interview process, and it's kind of a weeding out process of, does this person, A, know what they're talking about? B, can they help me? C, are they sincere and genuine? Is it someone I'm actually going to want to work with? Which is something I appreciate so much about you, having worked with you over the last couple of years. And do they understand both my specific needs, and if we're talking about an athlete, the specific needs of my sport? There are athletes that I wouldn't feel comfortable working with, that I would certainly refer out, because either I don't have the knowledge base of the sport and probably don't have the time to delve into it, versus, do they really get the demands of my sport? If I have a lacrosse player come to me and say, I want to train to be a better lacrosse player. Yeah, I can do SAQ stuff. I can make you a better field sport athlete, but are there people that are better that I could refer out to? Sure. I think that the client asking the questions of, what would you do with me over the course of 3 months, 6 months, a year? What are the adaptations? What are the things I can expect to see as far as progress? And trying to get a feel for how much they understand your sport and your needs, I think is huge. And I don't know at that, the middle school, high school level, if those kids are comfortable enough to ask those questions. But trust me, the parents are. The parents a lot of times are getting very involved in these discussions, which is good. It's something I would do as a parent if I was going to have someone working with my kid and spend the money to, trust them with my kid and their progress or lack thereof. I think that's big stuff. And I think that's a really good way to get an understanding of who you should have working with your athletes. I also think the coaches should be very involved in that conversation, which is what I love about the teams that I work with around here. The coaches are very involved, and their feedback is what allows me, because like I said, if I'm working with a group of 25 kids and I'm not always seeing them in the water, understanding what the coaches are seeing in the water, what they think the limiting factors are, or what they think is holding someone back, what they're seeing as far as stroke technique or walls or starts or whatever it may be, having a good understanding of what the coaches are seeing in the water and what they want to see more of really allows me to cater a program to a kid. And that's having that open line of communication with the coaches that I do in this area makes my job a lot easier and makes it a lot more efficient.
Wow, you said so many just great things there. Some of what I took away was the ability for, parents or the athletes themselves to be able to just ask great questions and ask good questions. To have sort of like you said, an interview process, I think is huge. And the other one was you highlighted obviously a lot of that, how that collaborative relationship works, how making sure you have somebody who is not just willing to, but open to and will and wants to communicate with all members of the athletes or clients team. And that could be, like you said, coaches. It could be, I know in our world, which is again, one of the things we appreciate working with you, Lee, is the ability to communicate with somebody that might be working with from a fitness standpoint, or even somebody else in the medical field, or those kinds of things. I think along any line, the ability to have sort of a team working around you and for you and communicating together is so important. And I think you look at like the professional sports world, or you look at somebody like Katie Ledecky, who you mentioned. I know when you get to athletes, when they're at that high of a level, they have whole teams working for them. So how can we sort of facilitate that with maybe people who aren't quite at that level or at that level yet? So I love it. That's awesome. And then Lee, this last question I have for you, with the new year just having occurred, what kinds of things do you have going on looking into 2020?
Well, for me, this is a big year, 2020 being an Olympic year. I have quite a few swimmers who are getting ready for Olympic trials who have recently made their cuts. So pretty excited about that. Business-wise, just always trying to, grow the business. I have a great referral network of, to me, most importantly, physical therapists, yourself, obviously the physical therapist at Healthy Baller, and a couple of others who, I trust if I need a physical therapist, and who obviously trust in me as far as sending patients my way when they're ready to be released and start to take those next steps. So to continue to really cultivate those relationships. I love what I do, and I love getting busy, and I'm starting to, grow some trainers under me who I think do really good work. And so that's kind of my next steps. I want to start to become almost the sole provider of all things strength and conditioning to swimming in the DC area. So right now I work with one site of the RMSC, the Rockville Montgomery Swim Club, and one site of Nation's Capital Swim Club. But to start to grow that a little bit, start to look at expanding that is kind of my next steps. But right now, those groups obviously keep me personally very busy. And just to continue to do the work, I talked about this before, but, the working with the coaches, working with the parents, working with the athletes, I didn't mention the PT side of that. The beauty of our setup at Healthy Baller is that I have open lines of communication with physical therapists who are working with some of our athletes, literally where I can just walk in on a session and just kind of sit there and talk things out, try and understand what the athlete's feeling. I love having that relationship with you, where we've shared a couple of athletes where if I'm seeing something or if you're seeing something, it's this simple. We just get you on the phone or step into your office and talk to you about things to continue to grow that relationship and continue to learn. For me, I'm always, never too good to keep learning. I love the stuff that you're doing where, you're doing these workshops where I can just step in and kind of learn from you guys, different ways that you approach things, different ways that you communicate things to your athletes or to your clients or patients. That's what invigorates me about this industry, is that you can continue to learn, you can continue to get better if you allow yourself to, and if you're willing to put in the work.
I love it, man. That's awesome. That's super. I appreciate you sharing that. I appreciate obviously the kind words, and it's great to hear that despite the years in this industry and all that you've learned and your expertise, that you're still humble enough to realize that. And I know I go through this process every day, that you realize all the things that still you don't know and you have out there to learn. And I think for anybody watching this and listening to this, I think that's the sign of, honestly, an expert, is when you have somebody who is openly willing to admit what they don't know and what they're still learning and all those things, because, there's always more to learn. There's always more coming out. And I think that's great to hear. So again, for anybody watching, listening to this that wants to work with Lee, I obviously highly endorse him. We've sent some of our people his way. He's amazing at what he does, not just with swimmers, but any athlete or even general population. Again, you can find Lee if you're on Instagram. It's Lee, LeeSommers, and then his website is ppf-fitness.com. Lee, is there anything else I missed as far as how to contact you?
No, you can always get me at leesummerspt@gmail if that's, if email is your preferred method. But yeah, I'm here and I'm always willing to help and love working with you, Zach, and your guys. It's been a real pleasure. I appreciate you having me on for sure.
All right, thanks, Lee. Appreciate it, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Thanks, Zach.